Now, the most live local talk with Melody Burns.
Okay, it's 4:35 on a Tuesday afternoon. In the studio with me is Jeff Gildersleeve, who at this moment, we're going to call him a Marine because he is a Marine. Forevermore. You're never a former Marine. It's
Once always.
Yeah, right? Well, let me join us with Jackie Russell. Jackie, who is a wife of a military service member who actually, we talked about the Christmas cards for our troops. Jackie knows all about the Christmas cards for our troops and what they mean for our service members when I get them. So I asked her to join us today and just talk a little bit about the Christmas card and what it means. So, hey, Jackie, thanks for joining me this afternoon.
Hi, Melody. Thank you so much for allowing me to actually speak with you on air.
Hey, listen, I think it's great. Now, you read the article about the Christmas cards for the troops. You sent me a note and you said, I know all about this. This is great, right?
Absolutely.
So talk to us about your husband who is serving, correct?
Yes, he's actually in the 108th Infantry Division here in upstate New York.
Mm-hmm. Been in Afghanistan, correct?
Yes, he was with the 101st Airborne Division down in Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Yeah.
He deployed back in 2009 to Afghanistan.
Okay. And so we were talking about the value of these Christmas cards. I don't think people understand what it means when someone who's serving overseas actually gets one of these cards.
Oh, yeah. We would have a group of wives that would get together, and we would basically get as many Christmas cards together as possible, go to the dollar store, literally write out cards. Yes, you wouldn't know who it was going to, but you would just send it in a big parcel box, and each member of the unit would get a card, either written by one of us or some friends and family, just a little bit of appreciation, saying thank you so much for serving with us, and you're not forgotten while you're over there, of course.
Yeah, and I think that's what we do. You know, this is our third year doing the Christmas cards for the troops, and we have a goal of 20,000 cards this year. I think that would be nice to be able to touch 20,000 of our servicemen and women.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I've gotten friends of mine from Girl Scout Troop 1193 helping. The company that I work for is also allowing me to do a little bit of a drive here at work. So that way we can collect as much as possible so I can bring them on along with us.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's really good. All right, so we're going to see you Saturday night at the VFW at 7 o'clock, right, Jack?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. All right, thank you, and thank your husband for his service to this great country.
And yours too, Jackie, because families are serving as well.
That's right.
Yes, exactly, and thank everyone, any troops out there, any family members. I know exactly what it's like to have a family member deployed, so it's nice to have people who care enough to help out.
Great. Thank you. All right, we'll see you on Saturday. Yeah. I'm actually doing a deployment ceremony in Saratoga on Sunday.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, we have some troops going, so I'm going to do that.
Actually, where? I'd like to stop in and say thank you to everyone.
I'll give you that info a little bit later,
great.
so you know. Yeah, Sunday morning at 11. That's Jeff Gildersleeve, by the way, with me. And there was something else. You wanted to talk about being a Marine, about something, and that was Syria, which is where we were. So I'll let you spin a little bit on that.
You know, the thing that frustrates me is our politicians fail to realize that when they have these half missions, or they've done this historically, and it's not a Democrat or Republican thing. They just forget that every time they make a mistake, there's some kid at the end of their mistake paying with his life or a limb. It's ridiculous. They do these half-cocked ideas, and they don't pay. I mean, the politicians, they screw up left and right. Somebody else is paying with blood. And it bothers me that there's no proof one way or the other who actually used the chemical agents over there. So we're going to launch an undefined mission that with no beginning, no end, no middle. I mean, when you have a book, you have the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Right, you usually know. Well, you have a goal in mind, too.
You do. And they do this constantly where there's no defined mission. And it's like, well, we'll launch a few missiles or we'll send a few planes or whatever we're going to do. But they're unclear. But these poor kids who are the cream of our crop, they are the best of the best. All these military kids, they put on the uniform, they're willing to pay that price. That's when they hold their hand up, that's what they're saying is ultimately I'm willing to pay with my life for my country.
Right.
These politicians, I don't think that they realize that there are consequences for their foolish acts. And we need to be very clear on what it is we're doing over there before we get involved. I don't want to get mixed up in another one of these endless, escalating, things where there's no defined mission. The rules of engagement they've got currently in Afghanistan are ridiculous. They've got attorneys embedded with units down to very small levels making decisions as to whether they can shoot the enemy or not.
Right.
That's not how you fight a war.
Rules of engagement, they are
Silly,
absurd.
silly. And why should we let the cream of our crop pay with their lives?
You know what? You just threw something out there. Hold their hand up. Because the military holds their right hand up.
Yes, they do.
The Congress, anybody that's elected holds their hand up. When they hold their hand up, they take the oath.
Yes, they do.
And they take the oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Yes, they do.
This
And
works out good.
As have I, almost my entire adult life.
Yeah, right. I was going to
I've
say,
done the
been
same
there,
thing.
done that. Yeah. So it's interesting that we kind of walked into this conversation because I had a lot of people who called me today this morning and said, "Hey, did you see where the newspaper is endorsing the other a different candidate for county sheriff all over the New York Unsafe Act?" And first of all, I wasn't surprised by that, but
well, I actually think that's not good for him because one of two things: either they think he's the easiest one to beat with the Democratic candidate, or just he's aligning themselves more with their way of thinking, which is a little left of center.
Yeah, a little. You think?
Well, I'm
Come on.
trying to be nice, and so the last couple of Republicans they've actually endorsed it ended their candidacy fairly quickly. They lost,
absolutely.
so I'm not sure that's a good thing for him or not.
Yeah, right. But I mean, what is that issue here? Is the New York Unsafe Act, which of course I call it unsafe because it's not saving any lives.
No,
but it is also unconstitutional.
That's
and
correct.
you pretty much come out and you've said that, and that's why you said what you've said about it.
And if you think about it, it goes beyond the SAFE Act itself. Part of what bothers me the most about this country was formed on the belief that you're innocent until proven guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Now what we've done is, in an effort to get a few guilty people, and there's plenty of laws out there that takes care of most of what's in the SAFE Act, certainly not all of it. But in an effort to get a few of these people that commit violent crimes, we're willing to criminalize a lot of law-abiding people.
Right, otherwise law-abiding citizens.
So since when is it okay to go through the law-abiding to get the lawbreaker? When have we ever in this country allowed that to happen? And I can't believe that more people aren't looking at that and going, wait a minute, why are we penalizing law-abiding citizens to go after the criminals? It doesn't make sense. It's actually... and this is beyond the Second Amendment. I mean, the Second Amendment's obviously a huge issue in here, but I mean, why do we punish the law-abiding to get the lawbreaker? It shouldn't work that way. Should we be targeting the lawbreakers? Absolutely. A very small percentage of criminals commit the vast majority of the violent crimes. Those are the people that we should be spending our time and efforts on. Going after somebody who actually has an extra round in their magazine, come on. I mean, really ridiculous. Somebody going out to commit a violent crime doesn't care how many rounds they have in their gun, doesn't care what kind of gun they have. They don't care anything about any laws. If they're willing to take the chance of committing the ultimate crime, potentially of a murder, do you think that they really, really care about how they do it or what they do it with?
Right.
It's
Whether they have
ridiculous.
7, 8, 9, or 10. Yeah,
Absolutely
right.
ridiculous. And then if they get caught and charged, and say that somebody got caught in, doing an armed robbery, and then tacked on at the end there's a SAFE Act violation, they'll never get convicted of it anyway because the attorney's going to sit down with the DA. They're going to work out a deal. He's going to plead to one charge. Everything else is going to go away. What's it doing? Absolutely nothing. The only people that are being negatively impacted by this law are the law-abiding. Ridiculous.
So, I mean, if you were to read their endorsement of him, it sounds like you're going to be a lawbreaker because you're not going to enforce the New York Unsafe Act. I mean, that's the way that they wrote it, basically.
They are forgetting the fact that ultimately every law is subject to the Constitution and constitutional review. My opinion, and again, I preface this with I am not a lawyer, but I'm
Thank God.
yeah. Well, I can't say it. My daughter's going to be one, so but she's a good kid, and I don't think she would do anything foolish with her law degree. But I digress. I think that it's clearly, I mean, the way the law was written, the middle of the night, I mean, everything that they did, they violated their own rules to pass the law. There was no necessity. It's ridiculous. I mean, the entire
But there
thing.
was a necessity because, remember, the governor wanted to be the first one to say he got gun control.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I mean, you passed a really bad law. I mean, awesome, good for you. But the bottom line is that you are impacting the law-abiding, not the lawbreakers. So, again, it goes back to that and the Second Amendment. I think ultimately, right now in the Western District, I think they're going to probably, well, who knows? I mean, you can go anyway. But I think if you have a judge who's truly a constitutional judge, he's going to look at that and say it doesn't pass the stink test, basically. And either way, it'll probably end up down in the Second Circuit. Who knows what's going to happen there? And ultimately, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court in recent years has shown a willingness to look at Second Amendment issues. And they've ruled that it is an individual right. And I think ultimately this law will fall by the wayside and go into the scrap heap of bad laws.
Of bad law, right. It'll be at the top of the pile of bad laws, if you ask me.
Let's hope.
Yeah, well, listen, I have great hope, as someone said. I shouldn't have hope, but I do have hope, and I have faith. All right, let me do this. So I got to take a little traffic and weather break. We'll do that, and then we'll come back. I want to talk to you while I have you. You can stay a few more minutes, right?
As long as you need.
All right. I want to talk to you about the New York State Sheriff's Association because, remember, they issued a letter in response to the New York Unsafe Act. Did they endorse you, by the way?
They have not endorsed anyone.
Because they want to wait till after, right? But I want to talk to you about their letter anyway because when you look at their letter and the statement that they made earlier, it pretty much goes right along with what you're saying.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's what I thought. All right, let me do some traffic and weather, and I'll be right back on Talk 1300.
Good afternoon. I'm John Gabriel at the YNN Traffic Center on Talk 1300 on your Tuesday afternoon. Right now, I-90 westbound, we have very busy traffic in all three lanes from exit 3, especially up to exit 2, where it is stop and go from time to time, trying to get onto the Northway and the exit 24 toll plaza. Northway northbound, exit 7. Again, very slow due to a previous accident right through the Twin Bridges and just about up to exit 8. So expect delays there. Northway southbound, we have an accident in the right shoulder between exits, at exits 1E and 1W. I'm John Gabriel from YNN, only on Time Warner Cable.
Here's your Talk 1300 forecast from YNN. A passing isolated shower, mostly north country this evening. Otherwise, partly cloudy skies throughout the area. Temperature low overnight in the mid to upper 50s with some patchy fog. Wednesday, a pleasant weather forecast with mostly sunny skies. Temperature high in the upper 70s. It'll be cool Thursday. Could be an isolated shower in the morning. Otherwise, turning mostly sunny and breezy. Temperature high in the upper 60s to near 70. That's the latest forecast from YNN, only on Time Warner Cable. I'm meteorologist Heather Morrison for Talk 1300.
75 degrees in downtown Albany on Talk 1300.
One of the great stories in the Capital District now for over 60 years is Davies Office. Davies Office has provided outstanding office furniture options to companies not only right here in the Capital District, but to companies nationwide. And as I always tell you, when smart companies open up their new establishment, one of the first people they call is Bill Davies. So their productivity, their efficiency, and their customer satisfaction is at a peak right from the beginning. Bill and his family have also made Davies Office one of the great family stories in the area by making the company employee-owned and operated while continuing to provide outstanding products and service. Davies Office, everybody, they provide their client with a number one work environment. Are you thinking about outfitting your company with refurbished office furniture and new furnishings? Reach out to Davies Office today. Davies Office, located on Loudonville Road, a great story in this area for over 60 years. Call them at 449-2040, Davies Office at 449-2040.
Attention business owners, salespeople, and marketers. Get the edge you need to separate the good business-to-business prospects from the so-so prospects fast with a free trial from Hoover's.
Hoover's allows me to be a lot better at what I do.
And most importantly to me is a description of the organizations and then multiple layers of contacts.
Business owners, salespeople, and marketers are busier than ever. That's why you need Hoover's to find the key decision makers, get their direct contact information, and selling points to get their attention and earn their business.
It's extremely important to make a good, solid impression because I can't win a deal on the first meeting, but I can certainly lose a deal. And by having the information that I can get from the Hoover's portal and having it span so so many different areas. It's a great tool for me, and it's really helped me.
For a limited time, you can get 50 free B2B leads and a 24-hour free trial. Call now. 800-226-0017. Don't wait. 800-226-0017. 800-226-0017.
It's not enough to just build it for real.
Yeah, I mean, before we start, we design it, test it, and redesign it virtually.
Yeah, it's just not a go until everything is absolutely ready.
Whether it's launching a rocket into space or new products to market.
2, 1.
Siemens Industry Software is behind it from the ground up. Somewhere in America, an innovative company is defying the impossible. Siemens. Answers. Visit Siemens.com/answers.
All right, welcome back. It's 518-476-1300 right here on Talk 1300. We're here till 6 o'clock. I have Jeff Gildersleeve with me, who is running for Saratoga County Sheriff. Now, I brought him in today because there was such a controversy over what's constitutional, what's not constitutional. So I figured I might as well bring him in and hold him to the fire on that issue. It's funny watching all of this because of the New York Unsafe Act, what has changed and has made a huge difference. And you have discovered that there is a number of sheriffs across New York State who are saying that this is a crock, this whole law, and that, it's not your law-abiding citizens we have to worry about. It's pretty much the criminals.
That's it.
That's it. If you spend all of your time, Jeff, out there going after law-abiding citizens who may have 9, bullets instead of 7, what's going to happen to the real criminals? What are they going to be doing?
Exactly. I mean, you have limited resources.
Right.
There's many other problems. This is what drives me crazy. People who actually are abiding by the law, for example, pistol permit holders.
Yeah.
Pistol permit holders go through a lengthy process to get that permit.
That's right.
They get a background check done.
Mm-hmm.
They get friends and neighbors to certify that
4
they're
of
good
them.
people.
Right.
There's
fingerprints.
There's actually an investigator who looks at it and makes sure that there's nothing in your background that prohibits you from having a handgun.
Yep.
They've gone through a lengthy process. Then, when they buy a handgun, they have to go through a NICS instant check.
Mm-hmm.
So there's layers upon layers of things that happen to those folks.
Mm-hmm.
Then, now suddenly, this person who's done everything that they're supposed to do properly, somehow, say, for example, you load a magazine with 8 rounds, preparing it to put it in your handgun.
Mm-hmm.
You put the magazine in the handgun, and you decide, I'm not going to chamber a round. So you've got 8 rounds in the magazine
right.
in an empty chamber. You are now a criminal.
That's
Where
right.
if you chambered that round, you've still got 8 rounds in the gun, but one's in the chamber and 7 in the magazine. So now you're a criminal just where that round is in the gun.
It makes so much sense to me.
Ridiculous. And also, the people that went through the process to do things properly
Yep.
are not the problem. They never have been. It's the people that are out there already committing crimes,
mm-hmm.
that are out there already possessing illegal firearms. The SAFE Act, if you think about it, a felon in possession of a firearm is violating state and federal laws already
right.
without the SAFE
That's
Act
right.
ever coming into it.
Mm-hmm.
These people are guilty of serious crimes when they're caught. This does nothing. It impacts the only people that are being impacted by this law are the law-abiding.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot emphasize enough that we do not go after law-abiding people to get to the bad guys. That's not how our system has never allowed us to target law-abiding people to get criminals, ever.
It does now.
Well,
I mean, this act itself is basically that way.
It's you wonder at the foolishness of it, really. And I often wonder, did the politicians really review this before they signed it?
No, they didn't read it. You know that.
And based on the way it happened,
mm-hmm.
the time involved in it, there's no question in my mind, most of them never even knew what they were signing.
Mm-hmm.
What was it, Nancy Pelosi that said...
with Obamacare.
Yeah, you'll have to read
pass it.
You have to pass it before you can read it.
But, I mean, this is the case because look how they brought up the law enforcement piece, the legal piece after. Oh, we didn't realize.
Right.
So, I mean, all of that came afterwards, and they're like, oh, wait a second. Well, gee, we didn't know that was there. They don't know about the number of guns. You can't have more than 5 if you're this. You can't do that. How many chambers? Well, now you can have 10 if you're going to go to a club, but you can't at your house, and you can't. So, I mean, all of these stupid little things that they've made changes to. So it just proves over and over again that the act itself is ridiculous.
Exactly. And we can only hope that ultimately it does end up in the dust heap, and
Yes.
we can go about our business. And if Governor Cuomo and the legislature and the Senate in New York State really want to do something effective, how about we target these felons that are going out there and committing violent crimes?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they? I read a story in the New York Post a couple weeks ago where some kid was arrested for the third time in about an 18-month span with an illegal handgun.
Mm-hmm.
Well, excuse me, but shouldn't he have been in jail? I mean, come on.
The third time. Is it 3 times a charm?
I don't know. I mean, the problem is that everybody, it's all about the deal, and I get that. I mean, the criminal justice system could not be bogged down with doing a trial for every single person. It'd grind to a halt, and everything is a deal. But there are some things that they probably shouldn't. A violent felon in possession of a firearm should go to prison for a long time.
Yep, absolutely.
And the fact that they can plead these things down and work these deals and all this other happy stuff, that's not doing anything to alleviate the problem. So if Governor Cuomo, the legislature, and the Senate want to do something, how about we pass a law targeting those violent felons that we know they're the ones that go out and commit the violent crimes? Why aren't we going after them instead of the law-abiding?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That would make a lot more sense. I wanted to, we're like running out of time, but I wanted to talk to you about the New York State Sheriff's Association, the letter that they sent out back in January of this year, right after the act. They had their meeting. They got together. They talked about it. They brought up numerous reasons why it's an asinine act. Let's call it what it is, and how it's really not going to curb crime at all. So, looking at that and then looking at your stance, they're extremely similar.
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you were aware of that, when you came in today, but I had pulled their letter. I had talked about their letter before when it first was issued. But then looking at that, they were talking like they did, like you just did, talked about felons. But they also talked about how the act was enacted, what happened with that, the message of necessity, but also how this isn't going to prevent any crime.
No, it is not.
Really. And then the fact that if they were to spend all of their time, as you've said, out there looking for the law-abiding person, what's going to happen to all the criminals that are running around?
And that's exactly it.
Yeah.
And we've got better place and better things to do than chase around people who are law-abiding people.
Yeah.
It does not make sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it goes beyond crazy. And then there's been some other sheriffs in the state who have also said that they would not enforce
There's quite a
the
few
SAFE
of them,
Act.
actually. Yeah, I've run into quite a few of them that said that.
And you know what? They're doing the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
and as it should be. And I keep getting accused, well, what other laws won't you enforce? You know what? Almost every law in the books has been tested constitutionally.
That's correct.
This one has not even by a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just any reasonable person would look at this and say, geez, I mean, come on, really? Are we actually going to go after the people who obey the laws?
It was interesting when Craig Apple, Sheriff Albany County, was in here with me, and people had called and asked him a question. Are you going to go knocking on people's doors to confiscate their guns?
Oh, heck no.
I mean, that was his answer, too. I mean, and here you have somebody who's currently serving in office who said no. Now, if he gets called to a house because there's something going on, and somebody's been shot, he's going to ask them about the guns in the house, which I'm sure you're going to do. You're not going to say to the guy, well, we're not going to take your guns. You just killed somebody.
Yeah, and you know what? And somebody recently was talking about, if you go to a domestic where shots have been fired, are you going to arrest them for a SAFE Act? There's so many other violations of law going on right there. That's at the end of the list.
Yeah, right. All right, I'm going to hold you because you got some calls I didn't get to them. It's 5 o'clock. We'll do the news. We'll come back. You want to talk to them? I'll keep them for just a few minutes longer. It's 518-476-1300. We'll be back on Talk 1300.
Now, the most live local talk with Melody Burns.
5:08 right here on a Tuesday afternoon. Jeff Gildersleeve's here with me. I had him come in because of the article that was in the paper today, and I wanted to get to the bottom of this whole issue. Is he going to enforce the laws? That seems to be the big question. Is he going to enforce laws? Of course he's going to enforce the laws. I think he just told you that. But the big question is the unconstitutional law, which is the New York Unsafe Act. And when we look around the state and we talk to a number of other sheriffs, which we have done, and many of them are on the side and they agree with Jeff that this is an asinine law. very much so, and it doesn't deserve to be enforced because there are other laws.
Absolutely. For example, a domestic.
Mm-hmm.
There are already laws in place to deal with domestic incidents. There
Right.
are also laws in place to deal with firearms related to domestic incidents. Judges will order that any firearms in the home be surrendered. I mean, this is already in place. This SAFE Act is doing nothing new. I mean, it's just the new things are actually impacting the law-abiding people.
Let me add something to you. The SAFE Act, the Unsafe Act, has actually done something good. And here's what it's done. It has made people who never before in their lives owned handguns understand the importance of it, going out, getting their permit, going through all of that you said, the background, all of that stuff, getting trained, and now they own handguns. And women, too. Women now understand how important it is for them to be protected. So in these cases, such as domestics, where, it's women that end up getting shot by a husband or a boyfriend or whatever, a lot of them now can protect themselves where they
Correct.
couldn't do it before. So I have to give a plus to the Unsafe Act just for that.
And quite honestly, we should be making every effort to allow people to protect themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
And the courts have held time and again that law enforcement is not required to be there when you call.
That's right.
There's been some lawsuits over, people have called 911 and the response has been delayed or whatever, and people have been hurt or killed, and they sue. And the courts have said, sorry, but you can't sue them for that. I mean, they can't be there with you 24/7. And believe me, law enforcement makes, especially for, the hot calls, somebody's getting hurt or, it's a crime of violence, or if there's the threat of a weapon, believe me, law enforcement will risk their own lives to get there to help you. But, the bottom line is it's a time and distance thing.
Right.
It depends on where they are and where you are. So you could be waiting. And the more rural the area that you are in, the longer the wait. And when things are going bad, a minute's a long time. Imagine what it's like if it's 30 or 45 minutes.
Right, or 20 minutes, or which is a lot in some areas. As you say, upstate New York is rural.
Yes.
So it's not like you guys are just hanging on the road, just waiting down past a second tree.
Yeah, we don't park at their mailbox waiting for the call to come in.
I didn't think you did. Even though some people probably do. Well, you're here. You're gonna have to take calls. That's
Sure.
the way it goes. All right.
No problem.
Okay, let's go to Delmar. We'll talk to Norbert for a moment. Hey, Norb.
Hi, Melody. How are you?
I'm good. You got a question for Jeff, or you got a comment?
Yes, I do. First, I want to say my hat's off to Jeff Gildersleeve for standing up what he believes is an unconstitutional law.
Thank you.
And his decision that it really isn't an enforceable law because it's only against the law-abiding citizen. So I wanted to throw that out.
Thank you very much.
My sincere thanks, and I share my, although I'm an Albany resident, I certainly promote you among the Capitalistic Defensive Pistol League members who are in Saratoga.
Thank you again. That's awesome.
You're welcome. And my question is for Jeff is, what will be the interface with the state police who are under the thumb of the tyrant governor we have at this point?
I don't have an answer to that because I don't know how it's going to work. I can tell you that in my discussions with state police that I know, they are very much against the SAFE Act themselves. I find it to be it's going to be a difficult situation because I know there are some that would probably not want to be involved in enforcement and others that would. We would have to handle it on a case-by-case basis. I'm not going to come out and say that I'm going to oppose the state police, but I would certainly like to sit down with them and try to come to a happy compromise where we're not locking up the law-abiding.
Okay, Norm?
Yeah, that's good because I've spoken to many state police individually who definitely feel that way. But again, I feel for them. They're in a very tough position being underneath the thumb of our current governor.
And they are in a tough spot. And quite honestly, I think that the majority of the state police is doing like what everybody else is doing, waiting for this thing to work its way through the courts. Nobody wants to be the guy who actually makes an arrest under the SAFE Act. Turns out it's to be unconstitutional. And then they spend the next 2 or 3 years of their lives in civil court over a lawsuit. And having endured that unpleasant experience a few times myself, I can tell you that it's not a lot of fun, even though in the end you're vindicated, or I've been vindicated. But if you make an arrest under a law that's clearly unconstitutional, and it turns out that that gets backed up by the Supreme Court, you've got an issue. And I think most guys realize that, and I think most guys would be very reluctant to put themselves in that position.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Thanks, Norb. Yeah, absolutely. You know, the Unsafe Act actually takes control away from the local, you know, because of the recertification and then keeping track of the database, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a major issue.
Sure.
It should be that the power should stay at the local level. So it should be at your level, at the sheriff's level.
Correct.
You know, and Norb's question about, you know, what will happen with that. So I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains with this.
No question.
Right?
No question
Trying to figure it
whatsoever.
out. I mean, if you come on a scene, what's going to happen here?
And who knows? I mean,
yeah.
I've a hallmark of my career has been working well with others,
Mm-hmm.
and I certainly would like to continue that. I'm sure that we can work out something where we're not going to be. I find it very objectionable that anybody would even think it would be okay to arrest a person who's been a law-abiding person their entire life over an extra round or two in a magazine.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine tying up the court system for that? I mean, and the time.
And you know what? The sad thing is that you're also putting a mark on somebody's life who never did a thing wrong in their life, and now because of some foolishness, they're in trouble. I mean, it bothers me that we've even sunk to this level.
Mm-hmm. Well, it doesn't surprise me, though. Let's go to Ballston Spa. We're going to talk to Mark in Ballston Spa for a moment. Hi, Mark. No, I think Mark's gone. We'll get rid of Mark. We'll go to Tom in Guilderland, too. Hey, Tom.
Hello, Melody.
Hi, Tom.
Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Tom. How are you?
Good. God bless you, and thank you for your long service to our country and our community.
Well, thank you, Tom. It's been an honor and a pleasure, I can tell you that.
I have long understood that the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution against self-incrimination exempts criminals from having to register their firearms because the doing so would be incriminating themselves. So the registration requirement for what have now been defined as assault weapons can only apply to the law-abiding because the criminals are protected by the Constitution from having to incriminate themselves by registering their weapons. Is that your understanding, too?
You know, I've never actually even thought of that. That's an interesting take on it. I'd have to actually sit and study that for a little while. That's different. I got to tell you, I've never even given that a thought. That's a wild thought. I'm going to have to go research this now.
It's an argument you are entitled to use. NRA and a bunch of other groups have been using it for decades.
Yeah,
of course,
that's good.
Politicians and media tend to ignore it, but you know, well, how serious are you taking your job to use the resources, the responsibilities you took an oath to use to protect the best interest of your constituents when you're passing legislation like this? And you've been told by groups like the NRA, repeatedly by our representatives, that what you're doing is unconstitutional, and look at it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can only say I feel blessed that there are people like you willing to stand up and do the right thing.
Well, thank you.
It's unpopular, and there are so many people trying to stab you in the back and misrepresent what you're doing.
Well, thank you very much.
I hope you get elected because we need people like you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. All right, you know what? It's 5:17. I got to do a little bit of traffic and some weather. I'm going to hold you to the end of till 5:30 if that works for you. Okay, because you got more calls, and I'm trying to give everybody the fair chance to get in. It's 518-476-1300 if you want to talk to Jeff. You can do it right here up till 5:30, and then we're going to let him fly away and do what he has to do because he has to be somewhere. We'll do some traffic and weather, and we'll be right back on Talk 1300. All right, it's 5:21 right here on a Tuesday afternoon. I have Jeff Gildersleeve with me, and we're talking about him because there was such a controversy over, is he going to enforce the laws? You're going to be a sheriff. How can you not enforce the laws? Well, first of all, the New York Unsafe Act is ridiculous. But so we threw that in there. It's unconstitutional. And as I reminded some of you, as Jeff did, he did hold up his right hand a number of times, and he took the oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, and that's pretty much what you do as a sheriff also.
That's correct.
Right? It doesn't waver. I mean, you can't pick and choose then.
No, I mean, part of the oath of office is to uphold the Constitution of the United States and New York State.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to do that.
Absolutely.
You're not going to pick and choose,
No, I'm
what
not.
part of the Constitution you want to pay attention to.
You know what? And there are times when, for example, free speech issues.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that people say that I don't agree with. But you know what? I will defend to the end their right to say it.
There you go.
And that's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I may not like what you're saying, but I defend your right to say it. It's part of who we are as a country and as a people. And picking and choosing which rights you like and don't like, it's really not a good way to be. I think I mentioned last time I was on here Alan Dershowitz, who's
Mm-hmm.
a very left-leaning attorney,
Mm-hmm.
who said to the people that were challenging the Second Amendment, he said, be very careful about the amendments that you want to get rid of, because next time it might be the ones that you're fond of.
That's right.
You're stepping onto a very slippery slope. And, again, I mean, the entire document, our Constitution, makes us what we are. And those that want to tinker with it are making a serious error, because I think one of the reasons we are the greatest country is because of that document. It makes us unique among all nations. And, and the Second Amendment is part of that. And you have to be willing to take the good with the bad with the good. I mean, it's all mixed in together, but it's part of who we are and what we are, and it's part of who I am.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Well, we're coming up on Constitution Day. It is on the 17th of September, so how fitting is that? All right, let me go to Glenmont. We're going to talk to Nick in Glenmont, see what Nick has to say. Hey, Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Hello, how you doing? Mr. Gildersleeve, I want to start by saying I by no means support the SAFE Act, but my question is regarding civil liability of the department and a deputy. Let's say if the SAFE Act is found constitutional and a deputy responds to a domestic dispute complaint, they find a weapon that is in violation of the SAFE Act. They choose not to enforce that law based on the decision of the sheriff not to enforce the SAFE Act. That weapon is then used at a later time, and does that not put the department and the deputy at civil liability?
Potentially anything you do in law enforcement puts you at a civil liability. Law enforcement typically has a very, very large amount of discretion in what they do, when they do it, and how they do it. And believe me when I tell you, there's a lot of times when guys will overlook small violations or minor violations and move on, or the situation doesn't actually need to end with an arrest, or whatever the situation may be. And it's about knowing what you're doing and having the good ability to judge what you're doing as to whether it's going to be right or wrong. But there's no 100% guarantees in law enforcement. And again, you can be held civilly liable for darn near anything. I've been sued over some of the most, during this race I got sued, but you can be sued over some of the most foolish things you can think of, and there's no guarantees no matter what you do, right, wrong, or indifferent. We try to do the best we can, and that's one of the things I've tried my entire life, my career, is to do the best I can. And I was raised, and I raised my kids the same way. Doing the right thing when people are watching is never a challenge. It's doing the right thing when no one's watching that defines you as a person. And I've always felt that I'm that way. And I certainly, if I was a sheriff, I would encourage that and actually accept nothing less than that from the people that work for me.
All right.
I guess my question then would be to discretion. Doesn't that typically fall when dealing with a traffic stop with violations and not something that's potentially a felony?
It could be anything. I mean, certainly there are situations where officers will not make an arrest initially. They'll interview people. There's potential for an arrest there, and they decide, you know what, I'm going to wait on this one. I'm going to talk to the district attorney. I'm going to present it to a grand jury. There's a variety of things that happen. There's not necessarily an arrest every time there's an incident. And a lot of it has to do with what the officer knows at that time. I mean, he may have a good feeling that it's a good arrest, but he's not 100% sure, so he takes all the information, the evidence, and brings it right to the DA. That's why we consult with them.
Okay, thanks, Nick. I had a question. Let me follow up on that question with Nick, and I think you said it earlier. In the case of a domestic dispute or something going on, aren't there already laws in regard to what happens when you go into a domestic scene?
If there's a domestic, right now, more often than not these days in domestics, people are getting arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a very quick answer to situations like that. And if there is a domestic, if there's an arrest and there's firearms present, the firearms are going to come too.
And that's under previous laws, not so much the Unsafe Act. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's the Unsafe Act basically is being repetitive, and the officers are, and quite honestly, domestics are one of those things where it's an unfortunate thing that they occur, and most people want to resolve the issues. And there's the instant issue has to be resolved by the officers, but also the officers are concerned with resolving the underlying issues to try to avoid having this happen again, but also the escalation. So that's why firearms are taken out of the homes.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure because I thought that, and I wanted to make sure that was the case. All right, let's go to Burn Hills. We're going to talk to Tony in Burn Hills for a moment. Hey, Tone.
Good evening. Jeff, a pleasure to talk to you again. You probably don't remember, but you stopped by my brother's house up in Saratoga. You were diligently going door to door, and God bless you for doing that.
Thank you, Tony. I do remember meeting you. I think I interrupted a birthday party, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. You're absolutely correct. Good memory. Well, listen, I was appalled to see your opponent in the newspaper, the Gazette, recently say that he had no one seemed to come to him with any concerns about the SAFE Act, which I find that totally unbelievable. I mean, who in their right mind is not talking about that? Because you and I both know that's unconstitutional, and you actually turned honest citizens into criminals at a stroke of a pen.
And quite honestly, one of the issues that I'm hearing the most in my walking around happens to be the SAFE Act.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm speechless, and I apologize for that because I think I'm not.
That's all right. This whole thing makes me speechless too at times.
Right. I mean, so to deflect the issue and say no one's confronted him or no one's asked him about that, it leads me to believe that he's in favor of it, and then he believes that, well, you know something, it's a law and I have to enforce it. Well, I totally disagree. It's an unconstitutional law, as you and I discussed, and it's at the discretion, as we've seen other counties and other sheriffs and other DAs have not enforced it.
And as this goes on, I think you're going to find that's going to occur more and more and more. I think most district attorneys don't want to be wrapped around the axle on this issue.
Correct.
And they're trying to, undo. It's kind of like unringing a bell at that point when it gets to the DA.
Correct.
But I think they're trying to do the best they can. And again, the issue, probably the largest issue I'm dealing with in talking to people in Saratoga County is the SAFE Act.
Right.
Also the
it's
pistol.
It's a
pistol.
Concern.
It is, and I think it's something. Considering our county, I mean, our county is predominantly Republican and predominantly filled with people who are constitutional people and Second Amendment people, and it is an issue for them. And I've heard it time and again. I'm surprised that my opponent actually has not heard that.
Apparently he has selective hearing, I guess. I don't know what else I could say. It's just, listen, secondly, thank you for your service, and God bless you, and I wish you the best of luck, and we're on your side, brother.
Thank you, Tony. God bless
Thanks,
you.
John. All right, can I grab Tony? He's gone? Okay, so, all right, it's 5:30, so we got to do the news. I got to let you go. It was great having you here. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you so much.
And
I
your
really
opponent
enjoyed
is welcome too. I've extended the invitation. He hasn't been able to make it. Let's leave it at that. He's more than welcome to come in and clarify his point of view on this issue.
And I want to stay in touch. I want to get involved in the Christmas card thing. That's
great.
huge. I mean,
great.
we need
Saturday night, if you want to come at the VFW in Albany, we're doing.
We need to do more for our veterans.
Absolutely. Well, listen, there's nothing like them. They mean an awful lot to all of us. All right, let's do some news. We'll come back in just a few minutes.